This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. This time we're talking about Moon Knight, Episode 1.
That thing's about to break through the door.
We're out of time. All right, hey, listen to me. Listen, look at me. Look at me. This is real. I'm real.
No, you're not real. You're
Yes.
not real. No.
Stephen, you gotta give me control. It's the only way.
I'm gonna die.
Stephen,
I'm gonna die.
at me. You're not gonna die. Let me save us.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders. Maybe some Moodies, and possibly some Loonies. We're here on TV Podcast Industries talking about Moon Knight Episode 1. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Defenders. I am one of your other hosts, John.
And much like the three phases of the moon, well, there's probably more. I am Chris, but...
Yeah, you should have done some research before that intro,
Yeah.
Chris. I think there's about 12 phases of the moon, or more.
Well, it's like, isn't that like kind of like the Mercury's in retrograde while the moon is like upside down doing a yoga pose like downward dog or some weird stuff?
Yes.
I'm definitely not up on that at all.
Yeah, I think you've just made that up, Chris.
I think you might. I think you might have.
Hey, to be fair, I make a lot of stuff up.
I think it's probably the excitement. We always get excited when we're covering a new show, and this time is probably one of the most exciting we've had because we've probably been waiting for Moon Knight for the longest of all of the shows we've covered. We've been excited about Moon Knight getting his own series for probably about 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
There were rumors all the way back to the Defenders on the Netflix shows that we would see some kind of sighting of Moon Knight back then.
That is true. There was talk that one of the taxi drivers was Mark Spector.
Yes.
And it could have been.
It could have been.
But then they decided to do it this way.
Maybe not Mark Spector, but one of
Yeah,
the...
maybe not Mark Spector.
Other-
Or whether it was Frenchie or something like that.
Yeah, one of the other identities of Moon Knight. We will talk about some of those as we get through the rest of the series. We hope you've watched the first episode of Moon Knight because we're going to be going spoiler-filled into the show as we go through our discussion about this episode. If you've never joined us on TV Podcast Industries before, we've been podcasting for about 8 years now about loads and loads of TV shows, including all of the Marvel Defenders shows that aired originally on Netflix are now available on Disney Plus for your viewing pleasure right now. So we have covered all of those. We've covered every single MCU Disney Plus show from WandaVision to Falcon Winter Soldier, What If, Loki, Hawkeye, and now Moon Knight.
Yes. And we'll be covering the rest of the MCU slate going into 2022 with all the Disney Plus shows like She-Hulk and What If Season 2 and the June upcoming Miss Marvel. Also, we'll be covering in May. All roads have led to this thing. Something is coming, a sequel that one of our hosts may be very, very happy about.
Yes, I'm very happy. Very happy. Multiverse madness.
But who's multiverse?
Well, God only knows. But I think with Moon Knight, with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, this is like so fantastic because it's just all the lovely, weird, wonderful, historic stuff going on. Well, maybe not so much historic in Doctor Strange, but certainly here. And, supernatural, shall we say.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
fantastic. Love that side of the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a bit of Midnight Suns as well going on. That could be an interesting team up.
It certainly could be, and we've already heard Oscar Isaac is definitely up for joining the Midnight Suns with his version of Moon Knight. So,
And of course, with Moon Knight being in London, we have the Black Knight as well from Eternals, which he resides in London.
He does, Dane Whitman.
Yeah, MI6 vibe, mercenary vibe, who knows where the connections might lead to. So, this is opening up a whole new little zone in the MCU, I guess.
Absolutely, and we may even see Dane Whitman in an upcoming episode of Moon Knight. We don't know yet. We've only watched the first episode of Moon Knight, so we will not be spoiling any more episodes of Moon Knight after our discussion here. We'll only be talking about the first episode. Rumours that more than one episode will be released on the 30th of March, as it stands right now, but as we normally do, we will only be talking about the first episode. We will not be talking about anything other than that. So don't worry, you can enjoy this one if you've only just watched episode 1. Quickly, just want to say, well done for your nerd call out of Chris there, John. When Chris said, whose multiverse of madness was it? And you went, well, we don't know that yet because the movie's called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, not Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness. So nice nerd call out. I like it. Let's get into our chat about Moon Knight. Will we start off with the cast really quickly? The cast for the show is reasonably small, actually. Possibly because one person is playing a lot of characters in the show. That one person is Oscar Isaac, who's playing Steve Grant, Mark Spector, and Moon Knight in the show. Ethan Hawke plays Arthur Darrow. F. Murray Abraham is that voice that you hear. The voice of Khonshu that you hear throughout the episodes. May Kalamaway plays Layla, who have heard at least on the phone in the first episode. And Lucy Thackeray plays the wonderful boss of Stephen Grant in The Gift Shop, Donna.
Donna!
Yeah,
Donna!
I have to call her out because she plays the perfect kind of office level. The office level character. I think really enjoyed her in the episode. The executive producers for the episode are Kevin Feige, Louis Desposito, Victoria Alonso, Greg Curtis, Brad Winderbaum, Oscar Isaac, Mohamed Diab, and Jeremy Slater.
Yeah, they really buffed out the producers on this one. A bit of the writing credits, a bit of the directorial, a bit of the overall showrunners, as much as we have showrunners in the MCU Disney Plus shows. And then the Oscar Isaac getting a producing credit on this.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. There seems to be a way that they've been encouraging major talent onto the shows. We saw that with Loki. That's Tom Hiddleston had a producer credit on that show as well.
Well, with that one, yes, exactly. We did see that, and that one it kind of made sense to me because he had been owning a character for the guts of 3 films and this show.
10 years,
Yeah, like 10 years. So he has very much a hand in the creation, tweak, and delivery of this character and the growth. With the Moon Knight, Oscar Isaac obviously has put a lot into this because,
absolutely,
interestingly enough, like they didn't do this with Elizabeth Olsen on WandaVision straight up, to my recollection. So. This is obviously, like you said, it's probably a good way to get some of the more A-list talent to come into the MCU where there is sometimes, potentially quite long expectations on contracts.
Yeah.
Well, or at least I know they're not doing or it's alluding to that they're not doing multi-film deals as big anymore. But now at least, they are maybe just going, hey, come in and we'll give you producer credit on this. You'll get more money. And you know what? And maybe we'll do the Midnight Sun soon. Or maybe you do Moon Knight Season 2. Or maybe you're in this film. Like, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure there's still a bit of, you can be or will be in a film or other series. I'm sure that's still in the contract. But it's good to see them being put down as producers and being involved like that. So
they're certainly definitely not just being put down as producers.
You know
we know Oscar Isaac was heavily involved in the creation of this character, and his version of it, and his take on this role was definitely involved in there. The announcement of Kevin Feige for this season of shows, the shows that are coming up this year, the ones you mentioned, Chris, are all that these shows will begin on TV and will move into the movies. Miss Marvel, we know, is going to appear in Captain Marvel 2.
The Marvels
now, that has now been called. We will see Moon Knight appear in movies in the future, apparently. So that's the expectation. We'll see She-Hulk in the future as well. That was how they were announced by Kevin Feige for this phase of Marvel TV for this year.
Hopefully, as long as it goes well.
I did mention there one of the executive producers, Mohamed Diab, is also the director of this episode. Diab is an acclaimed Egyptian director with a number of award-nominated movies under his belt. This is his US directorial debut, and he has promised to deliver a modernized and modified version of Egyptian culture that will work in the MCU. So they've been consulting with him directly as he's been doing a lot of filming, and is, of course, Egyptian himself. So they've been consulting with him on the look and feel of the show.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, just in terms of, the modern Egyptian culture, but also just having someone like that who is a resource and fountain of knowledge on the Egyptian history and the gods, I suppose, is really good. Yeah.
Yeah. The duality of Egypt, the old and the new, in one. And yeah, his part, he is acclaimed, and I think it really is. His Egyptian work is huge.
Yes.
Huge.
Yeah.
For someone like myself, who's not deep into the award seasons and the films, this would be like, this for me is his kind of coming out party. But I do understand he has broken in many other ways, but it is, yes, very much his US directorial kind of debut. And for a lot of people, maybe his just debut as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I must say I've not seen anything previously of his, so this is the first time seeing his stuff. So, thumbs up.
Absolutely. He's got a stamp on this season as well. He's directing episode 1, 3, 5, and 6, I think, of the season. So, he's got most of the episodes, and again, puts his stamp on it from his perspective too. The episode was written by Jeremy Slater, mentioned as an executive producer before. He is the creator of Moon Knight for the TV show. He is the that's what they call showrunners over here on Marvel. He is the creator of the show. Previously, he created The Exorcist and a show we've, of course, covered on TV Podcast Industries. Yes. He is the creator of Umbrella Academy for Netflix as well. Yes. So has adapted some dark comic book material, for TV before, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting whether we can call Netflix TV or is it just
it is.
streaming.
It's 100%.
We watch
I hate
it
that
on
term.
TV.
It's streaming. I stream everything. I don't have a line coming into my house with old cable anymore. Everything is streamed.
I do. We still have it.
Yeah.
That's what provides
weird.
all of our
No,
stuff.
you do, surely, if you've got Virgin.
We're getting into the intricacies of broadband coming through a cable network or fiber network. But yes. I have the cable. I do not partake. I have the physical cable. I do not partake of the term terrestrial cable TV.
And I presume he's still, as the creator of Umbrella Academy, I presume he's still involved in Umbrella Academy Season 3, which is coming up later this year as well. And we will be covering here on TV Podcast Industries. So looking forward to getting back into the Umbrella Academy too. Season 2 was significantly better than Season 1. So hopefully they keep that trend up and Season 3 will be fantastic then. Yeah. And of course, we do have to give a shout out for the original creator of Moon Knight, Doug Moench, the creator of Moon Knight back in the 70s, first appearance back in Werewolf by Night, created as a foe for the Werewolf by Night, Moon Knight. So lots and lots of people involved in the show. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for episode 1 of Marvel's Moon Knight?
Sure. Stephen Grant is a mild-mannered gift shoppist at the British Museum's Egyptology section. He takes the bus to work and generally arrives late. He enjoys the company of the living statue and lives alone with his fish, Gus, the one-fin wonder, in his apartment in central London. But things are not what they seem. Why does he wear an ankle restraint to bed? A potential red flag if he were dating. But wait, he has a date arranged with the attractive tour guide at work. He just doesn't know how that came about. And why, oh why, does JB the security guard at the museum keep getting his name wrong? His parallel worlds are about to get out of hand for Stephen when he wakes to what should be a Friday to find himself on an alpine field in Germany, a scarab beetle trinket in his hand, a voice ringing out in his head stating the idiot is in control, and armed guards firing from the alpine schloss. Running to the local village for safety, he encounters Arthur Darrow, who is weighing the lives of volunteers from the village and passing judgment in the name of the Egyptian god Ammit. Arthur singles out Stephen, but despite the blood on his hands, a revolver in his hand, the many dead bodies, the numerous crashed cars, and being at the wheel of the Buddy Cupcake van, Stephen doesn't really know how he escaped the pursuing guards from that village. But with a jolt, he wakes up in his bed, in his apartment, and starts to get ready for work, believing it was all just a dream. But things are about to get stranger, as it's actually Sunday. His fish Gus now has 2 fins, he's missed his date, and back at his flat he finds a cell phone and locker key hidden in his apartment. As he tries to comprehend what's going on, he investigates a noise in his flat, but finds nothing until his reflection in the mirror, called Mark, seems to be talking to him. He flees his apartment, but he encounters a large beaked creature, the god of the moon, Khonshu, in the corridor, and flees back to his flat for safety. Back at work the following week, things don't stay calm for long as he again encounters Arthur Darrow, who is looking to get his scarab beetle back, but recognises the chaos inside Stephen Grant. That evening, before finishing work, an ancient Egyptian Anubis-like dog tracks Stephen at the museum. As he runs for his life from the dog, he makes it to safety in the toilets. With the dog breaking down the door, Stephen's reflection tells him to give him control. As Stephen embraces Mark Spector, Moon Knight emerges and fights off their attacker.
We got it all in this episode, didn't we?
Yeah.
I kind of wasn't expecting to have everything in here. You got to have Moon Knight, of course, because that's the name of the show. But as the episode went on and the way it was being shown on screen, I was kind of thinking that all we were going to get with just the flashes and it will be kept back for a second episode. But getting all the way to the end and getting a proper bit of torment between our 2 major identities here and showing Moon Knight as well, I thought was really cool. Getting everything together, it was really, really exciting episode.
Definitely, yeah. This was jam packed. I mean, I thought this was brilliant writing and TV making, because everything was just done so well for me. In terms of the whole, with Stephen, with Mark, with Moon Knight, all these 3 people inside the single body, just introducing everything, and just the comedy. I mean, Stephen Grant, I really just enjoyed that portrayal and the accent. I know at the time of the trailer there was, what was that accent? But I really loved his kind of voice. It was just really kind of downbeat, and I thought it was really good.
Excellent. Well, let's choose that as our jumping off point. We will be talking about our 3 big points from the episode. Incredibly, I think, Chris, you came up with these ones. Our full moon point, our half moon point, and our total eclipse point. Our top 3 points from the episode. Our first point really has to be Stephen Grant, doesn't it? He is the central point from the show, so he has to be our first point, doesn't he?
He does.
And then, is it strange I want a Jaffa cake now?
I knew you'd get it. Yes. Yes. Certain people will get this joke. Yes, let's kick off with our full moon point and very much for me, this is the encapsulation of Stephen and the introduction of Stephen, the introduction of Mark, but this other person, this other reflection, and then the disembodied voice of something, which we can potentially assume is the scepter-wielding, weird-looking mummy coming down the alley, and then everything in between. This introduction, because I wanted to take this point as episode 1, as in, I am new to Moon Knight. I am new to, because to be fair, he's a bit of a deep cut. He's not a Spider-Man. He's not a Batman. He hasn't been on lunchboxes for kids for years. He's been sprinkled into 1 or 2 cartoons over the years, but he's not, I would dare say, he's not been a kind of front and center character for a lot of people, to say the general audience, who are slowly coming into what some of the rest of us within the kind of comic book fandom have known, and the rosters of different Avengers and kind of Midnight Suns and things like, and the Jeff Lemire runs, and he's definitely picked up in what I would say popularity over the years, throughout some of his comic book kind of iterations, and the writing, which is fantastic, and we can talk about that. Or you can go on over to Into the Night, a Moon Knight, or the Moon Knight podcast, which is a friend of ours, and he has gone through all of them, and you can listen to their thoughts. But I wanted to dig into how they portray and how they bring an audience who probably know very little about this, and I've just watched the trailer, on this kind of, you're introduced to this kind of bumbling, I think bumbling is a good term.
Yeah.
It's kind of very bumbling, kind of low, quiet shop assistant who knows huge amounts about Egyptian mythology.
Yeah.
But is essentially a shop clerk in the British Museum of, that's the British Art Museum, I think. That's not actually the actual history museum. Am I right?
It's the British Museum.
Yeah, it is. But is it the actual history museum, the one that we see on the outside, the location? Because that didn't look like.
Yeah,
I thought that was.
it is. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay, I did. I thought I had gone in a different route than it seemed when I went there. But yeah, it was interesting to get this introduction to this character who. I find it really hard to kind of encapsulate, because I was really just drawn in by this. He is the proxy for the audience.
Absolutely.
It's such a clever way of doing it.
Yeah.
Because all we're basically told is that he doesn't want to fall asleep. So you get the Rubik's Cube and that great montage of him trying to stay awake.
I love that.
This. And it was just so good, because you're questioning along with him. And then only after a good 15 plus, maybe more minutes, weird things start to happen. I kind of like the noises and the kind of full on missing time and just this consistent strangeness, let's call it.
Yeah. Certainly, it's the weirdness is set up from that opening moment when he wakes up and he's tied to his bed. There has to be a reason for that. There has to be something going on from the beginning. But yes, as other identities start to creep awake in his mind as the episode goes on, I think it's really well laid out. You're following along with this guy, Stephen. He feels like a very normal, natural person that you can identify with, who's just going about his slightly mundane existence. And you feel like you can identify with him before things start to happen. And you're absolutely right. He provides a great lead in for the audience for the episode, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, he's very inward looking, introspective in a sense. As Jay's kind of quite sort of, subdued. I just love that, his main point of conversation where maybe he feels a little bit freer is with the living statue. And that, in and of itself, that suggests something odd is happening, as well as, yes, the ankle restraints, the sand around the bed, but that is obviously the big thing, but it's just how they then introduce it into his day to day. I mean, where you have the tour guide coming over talking about the date coming up on the Friday, and he just doesn't really know. And, Donna's there saying, you rascal, I didn't know you'd taken a crack. So all this kind of stuff, and JB on the security desk at the museum, just constantly calling him different names. I think
Hi, Simon. Bye, Simon.
Exactly. Scotty is another one. So it's like all these different kind of names. So it's just, it's this world that's off kilter immediately, and it brings it off kilter for us as the audience, and that's just like really good. And I have to say, that living statue, all I could think of was Krusty Jugglers from from Hot Fuzz. Yes. But when Stephen is discussing this date that's happening, is, if I'm going to have a girlfriend at some point, I can't have ankle restraints. That's the definition of a red flag.
Absolutely.
It was just really, really good.
But it is one of the weird ones, isn't it? Where you've got, like, this guy is a living statue who goes out and earns money by sitting still for the entire day. But he does go home at the end of the day, and he must be like, that guy from the museum came over and talked to me for 3 hours or for an hour during lunch, Are they friends that they had conversations after he's finished his shift or not? Or is this just literally Stephen talking to a statue that he knows is living and breathing?
But that's it. I was thinking, is this I was half expecting the living statue to turn around and tell him to like clear off. And then I'm thinking, but maybe he draws the crowd to him like the couple wanting the photo.
Well, he did encourage them to pay their tip for getting the photograph with him, which the living statue can't do.
Yeah,
so,
he really did.
Yeah.
And of course, the other thing then, it's things like Stephen's a vegan, but he's going on a date with the tour guide to a steak restaurant. You know, Donna finds that strange. So it's all just a lovely off-kilter sort of situation that has been portrayed here through Oscar Isaac and through the story.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a really good way of, you know, setting up what is really complicated with these identities that occur through this first episode, and beginning with Stephen Grant, who is perfectly great comedy foil to the seriousness. It's that contrast that it brings as well.
Yeah,
because he did make me chuckle a lot through this with what he did. I was really surprised at just how much comedy was brought in through what was done. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is something really fun about that accent as well. I know we heard it in the trailer and everybody was kind of going, oh, why is Oscar Isaac, this American actor, doing a really bad English accent? But they call it out in the show. Everybody's like, what's with that weird accent? You know, why are you putting on this weird accent? It's supposed to be weird. It's not supposed to be a real London accent. It's supposed to be somebody impersonating a London accent as part of their identity. So it's fine that it doesn't work. And I love that it's called out in the show itself. What's also called out is people quite instinctively ignore Stephen Grant when he's talking to them as well. So he's not really heard by very many people around him. You know, he's, as I say, he's talking to the living statue. So I think it works really well. I love that Oscar Isaac took inspiration for the character from Carl Pilkington, from An Idiot Abroad. He's a character who's funny and doesn't know he's funny is exactly how he was described by Ricky Gervais, who cast him in that role effectively, that he is someone that doesn't know he's funny, but is funny just by how he speaks, and he doesn't think that's funny. So you get pieces of that coming out in Oscar Isaac and the way he talks. Not the same accent, of course, because Carl Pilkington's Northern English, but he does have the same kind of style and pattern of speech, I suppose, which I think comes through really well. Yeah, love Stephen Grant. I think he's a great point of view character for the show. I like that it focused on him as much as it did. I like that we didn't see the change in identities shown in the episode, that we saw him experiencing everything, and then we get cuts for times when Mark comes out and takes over. I thought that was a really, really good choice.
It was superb, and it made that chase scene phenomenal. Because just the first moment when that happens, where he kind of just rolls his eyes and there's the and then it's back and he's got the blood on his hands, and it's just really good. And it happens where he then ends up with the revolver in his hands, and he throws it at the car, as Stephen Grant. So it was just great seeing the chase scene through, dare I say it, the one-finned wonder fish out of water of Stephen Grant, but seeing the results of Mark Spector and Stephen having to then deal with that was really good.
And also a nice choice to have the link of the voice of Khonshu coming in over the top, going, oh no, the idiot's back. Did you just throw the gun at the car in front of you? Well, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm driving backwards. I love that kind of that use of this voice that we will see, I'm sure, throughout the series, or we'll hear more throughout the series. But I love that link of using that voice to kind of go that switch over between Mark and Stephen, even though we don't see Mark in control of Stephen's body.
And it is Khonshu that brings up Mark as the other identity here, where as he's waking up in this alpine meadow in Germany with the castle in the background, the voice says, surrender your body to Mark.
Exactly.
And Stephen's going, what?
Who?
You know?
Yeah. And then waves at the gunmen in the castle as well. That's hilarious. Really, really good.
It's almost like he's like, "Are you Mark? Am I supposed to?"
Yeah, and well, that third voice, the deep booming voice that Stephen keeps hearing is Khonshu, which is the ancient Egyptian god of the moon, and ultimately is the god that Mark's Spectre serves. Ultimately,
Yeah, it's just it's the very elongated legged thing that comes down the corridor towards him. And it's really cool. They name him in the credits. They've named him in the trailers. They've named him in pretty much everywhere. But it's interesting. I thought that we didn't get like as much as I was almost expecting a kind of exposition dump towards the end of this episode. Like we get to the different identities talking to each other, very visibly talking to each other. Like, give me control. I'm going to do this. And you get then the disembodied voice of Khonshu talking to them throughout the whole time as well. I was expecting an almost like, okay, here's the story. It's just like, you remember like, and freeze.
Yeah.
Well, you may be wondering how I ended up here. And then just to kind of like,
yeah.
We didn't get that, which is such an interesting...
It is.
Because it does make you wonder, like, okay, well, what is happening? Who is, like, why is that guy suddenly kind of wrapped in mummy bandages? I don't get it.
I mean, it is, but Stephen doesn't know who that is. So,
agreed.
That identity is confused by it.
Yeah.
So, possibly may recognize it because he knows his Egyptology, as we see with the great scene with the bored girl on the school trip. Like, I guess maybe we all had that experience at some stage going to another museum with school and just being bored. Or not.
I
maybe.
love museums.
But until the tour guide says, well, actually, they rip their entire insides out through their nostrils, apart from the heart, and then everyone perks up because it was the gruesome, horrible histories, I guess.
Exactly.
But it's interesting. I think it makes sense that they didn't name Khonshu in this, and I feel that the exposition in this, at least from this episode, is actually really quite subtle. I mean, because we have Stephen talking about the seven, or should it be the nine gods of the Ennead? Marketing have made a mistake here. We see him reading the book to keep awake, sort of interchange where he's flicking up the Rubik's Cube, where it talks about the rift between God and man, listing the different gods on that page. So I actually think the exposition in this series might come quite subtly. I'm not saying you're not going to get something a bit more direct, certainly when the identity of Mark Spector is on screen.
Yeah.
And
well, the point is that Mark Spector knows the identity of Khonshu. He seems to know everything that's going on. We don't see him very much here, but Steve Grant doesn't. So I would expect that we'll see Stephen Grant for the rest of the season, learning it, investigating it, trying to find out who this is, what this entity is doing. Massively different from the comic books. Can't stress that enough. This is not Stephen Grant from the comic books. Stephen Grant has his own identity, knows who he is Moon Knight. So is Mark Spector in the comic books. They're all their own individual identities. This is not like the comic books, but this works really well for introducing a brand new audience to Moon Knight for the MCU. I think it works so good.
Yeah. And by the end of this season, this 6-episode limited series, not mini-series or series, or very strangely put, we can talk about that very quickly at the end. But, we'll see. I fully expect he will be his own walking, talking identity by the end with his own understanding of everything. And, going on to become the Stephen Grant.
It'll be interesting, really, to see how it plays out. Because at this stage, I've got no preconceptions as to what will come. Because this first episode, I think, for me, is one of the best Marvel Disney Plus episodes, first episode that I've seen, actually. And in a sense, it doesn't have to deal with the shackles of the MCU movies in the past. So it is fresh and it's a new character. So I really, I think it has that to its advantage. I think, just to possibly finish off the full moon point, in terms of Stephen, we've talked about the third voice of Khonshu. We've seen, the Mark Spector identity in the mirror, that loss of time and just those use of reflections. We saw the one in the glass case, that was on the trailer, but the whole scene in the men's bogs in the British Museum was just really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I don't know what it was. I mean, we've seen this before, we have seen this. The
infinite reflection.
This infinite reflection. But I think it's actually just to see it in a Marvel setting, actually.
Yeah.
It feels like it just felt really good. And just the way it was done and how, Oscar Isaacs is playing these two parts. I was just blown away by it, actually.
It's really, really good.
I really, really enjoyed it.
And while we have seen the infinite reflection before, this breaking of one of the reflections to come out and talk directly to the main character who's still seeing his own reflections in the background as well is really, really well put together. I'm sure actually it's probably quite simple to do, but I'm not a filmmaker and they've done a great job with it here.
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
And I really hope we just see more of them, because I really just want to see these, and I want to see weird ones, and I want to see, like, we saw it on buses, we saw it, like, in the mirror, like, it's just, we saw it with the flicker in, it was a mirror, it was also then the play of light, with a flash of light in his bedroom earlier. Like, it's just that consistent, like, they're gonna get fun with it, I'm hoping, because it is just such a unique. Now it can just become a very unique thing for this show.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the stuff is going on in Stephen's head as well, which allows you to kind of play with it a bit. That there's a moment on the bus where he is traveling down the street and sees Khonshu on the street. It's that kind of stuff isn't happening in the real world. It's happening in Stephen's mind. So I love that they can play with that throughout the season as the season goes on, as we start to uncover what's going on here. I guess that's it. That is the majority of the show. As you said, Chris, this is one point to cover the entire show. So let's talk about the other major character in the show, really, our big introduction to probably one of the biggest stars that I never thought I would see in Marvel. Ethan Hawke playing Arthur Harrow.
Yeah.
Do we call him a villain? I guess we kind of call him a villain so far for the show. He's definitely the antagonist of Stephen Grant and definitely the antagonist for Khonshu.
I would say it is a purity of ideology that may set him apart. Whether it's, I could crush a glass at the start and put it in my sandals to walk on, which I guess doesn't seem the most comfortable. But
I tell you, they really sold that shot, though.
They did.
Every single step that he walks, and they've watched him for a long time, you can hear that glass crushing and creaking underneath his feet.
But I mean, that's, whatever about ankle restraints on a bed, crushing up a glass and putting it in your shoes to walk on all day. I guess for me, that's a bit of a red flag as well. Yep. And I guess it's the idea of the purity of ideology within Arthur, the fact that he is this acolyte of Amit on Earth, and with followers, it's the charismatic leader. This is kind of really interesting, because I mean he is the one in that German village where he's effectively balancing the life of the person, which I thought was really cool, with the scales on the tattoo on the wrist, but also with the pendulum walking stick with the two crocodile heads.
Yeah.
And that he's judging them on behalf of Amit here, or Amit is doing it through him.
Yeah.
And he's judging them on their life now, but also their life before and their life after. The poor old granny gets a turn for the worse. I just wish they could have dialed up the sort of almost kind
decay,
of
death.
Yeah, I kind of wish they'd just dialed it up to Indiana Jones level of. I mean, not quite so extreme, but I'd have liked to have seen her a little bit more desiccated than what she was.
Yeah, and I think we will. I think because that's when you were saying our potential villain. I think if they had have been a bit more graphic, maybe not. Again, we're not talking like face melting aspect here of Indiana Jones. We're like just cool, slightly more than her just going slightly off grey. And her looking like she just fainted and being carried off versus, like, if they had have lent in just a tiny bit, I think that would have been very obvious of he is the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and remember, it's also the amount of time that's not shown on screen. If you do pause it for a second at that moment that she's taken away, you can see that her life force has been drained from her entire body.
Definitely.
She looks like her skin has been sucked back. What I always find really interesting, we're a lot older than the target audience for a lot of the Marvel groups, I suppose, or Marvel shows. What I always find interesting about that is, Indiana Jones was a movie made PG and kids. It was made for 13-year-olds. It was never aimed at an older audience, but for some reason, those things that we saw in the Goonies and Indiana Jones are now considered too difficult for kids of 12 years old to watch. Like, they're way more adult than I was at 12 years old, so I don't know why they can't watch them. But those scenes are in there. I suppose what's interesting about it is what we see of Arthur in this episode is all through the eyes of Stephen Grant. He's kind of dropped into the situation in Germany. He doesn't know what's going on. He has to kind of pick up bits of what Arthur's plan is. And interestingly, what Arthur's saying to his assembled flock, let's call them, is that he's not trying to create heaven on earth. He's trying to create a better earth and as close to heaven before they get there, but realizes this earth will never be heaven. So he's kind of indicating that a lot of things are probably going to have to change at his hands before earth can move towards heaven, meaning probably he's going to have to kill a lot of people is kind of the way it comes across. But that judgment scene is really interesting. You wonder whether he is that unreliable narrator of his story and of what he's trying to tell people. Again, you're only seeing it through this moment with Stephen, but he effectively judges one person that comes up to be fine, no problem at all. You're a great person. Off you walk. This elderly lady who walks up to him and says, I want to be judged. He goes, oh no, I can see you're really good in the past, but maybe something that happens in the future means you're really bad. Bye. End of you. Bye. You're dead. What could she possibly be going to do in the next couple of years that would turn her into an evil enough person? He equates it to like Hitler and Pol Pot and stuff like that Amit would have judged as being an evil person that needs to be written from the world. So, I don't know. I'm not too sure whether it's just he is using that as a judgment of people that are going to be acolytes for his religion. Is that something to do with that he's able to judge the people that will be able to be manipulated by him and move on with his side of things? Or is there a real magical power in there between him and Annette?
Maybe she was going to do a big old age pension swindle from the state.
Yeah.
You never know. Or
never trust the wrinkles. It's true.
Exactly. Or possibly a bit like in Blackadder, she's going to annoy people by pretending that she's deaf all the time.
But there you go. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's enough to get on Amit's list.
I think the other interesting point with this sermon by Arthur, as Stephen arrives in there, is that when he's identified, because he gets them all to kneel by speaking Egyptian.
Absolutely.
And Stephen's the last one standing up, again, a great little moment where he's like, bollocks, and then gets down to try and hide himself. He does identify him as the mercenary as well, which is really interesting, suggesting that he certainly knows who the other identity of Stephen is.
Yep.
And all for this battle for this scarab beetle brooch or trinket that Stephen finds himself in as he finds himself in the German Alps.
Yeah.
So really that was interesting, I think, and also just he gives Stephen just gives him way too much information so that he can find him again back in London, saying that he is, he's a shoppist, a gift shoppist, as well.
Yeah.
So when asked, is he a mercenary? He's like, no, I'm a gift shoppist.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really funny.
Absolutely.
Well.
I like that Arthur thinks that he's as smart as the mercenary that he's dealt with before, and thinks this might be a cover up, and then goes, no, actually, it's quite easy to find you. You are Stephen Grant, and you are a gift shoppist in the museum.
But it's even as he's not able to hand over the scarab beetle, and he's like, I'm trying. I don't know what's going. It was so well done.
Yeah.
I loved it.
That's a physical comedy in there. With that. Yeah, really enjoyed that.
And so on that physical comedy, I was not expecting that, and it was so well done.
Yeah,
and it looked like with Oscar Isaac, I'm always expecting him to be. I just from everything else he's been, I did not expect his delivery on this in so far in what I've seen in episode 1.
He's such a good actor. He's go check out Ex Machina. He's absolutely brilliant. Unfortunately, a bit underserved in the Star Wars trilogy that he was in. Should have been a much bigger character. Really, a really good actor. If you have him, you use him. And I'm so glad they're doing that in just this one episode of Moon Knight already. He's been really, really
good.
But
in Dune alone, but then I didn't peg him as a comedic kind of actor. I've seen him in some SNL skits, and I'm like, all right, some of it was all right. It wasn't like rib tickling.
Sounds like an episode of SNL.
Yeah, and then this really had me. I'm like, oh, I don't care how many takes it took. This was just beautifully delivered with the I'm trying and and the choice by the director to. They did that piece where they center an item in the center frame and everything moves, but that piece stays in the center. Yeah. So there was Stephen was kept center frame, or at least was the pivot point, of the overall scene. So as the camera moved up, down, left, and right, he stayed centered. So it gave that really fast, quick action of movement as from a scene perspective, kind of a cinematography, but also that just kind of dislocation of a viewer, because you're like, oh, I'm over here, and the back, but I'm just still focused on this one item. Yeah,
I think the other really good thing about, you mentioned dislocation there, is the fact that after this German extravaganza and the chase scene, it is that he just wakes up back in bed. Yeah. And, you can think, oh, it's just a dream. And they just take it that lovely bit further where he's eating his cereal and he turns to Gus and he says, I wonder what fishies dream about, and I mean, it's kind of just really surreal, but it was a really nice way, because it is like, oh, it's back to normal. He thinks it's just a dream, and it sets up that next phase of uncertainty and just the confusion that comes into his world, and from everything that happens, even that Gus now has two fins, and he goes to the shop, and in effect, I think the shoppist at the aquarium.
That's not a word.
I know it's not, but the shoppist at the.
I just really love it, though. Yeah. I really want to be. I just add the word "is" to anything.
Exactly.
Profession. I'm a doctorist.
It's just she gets it right. She goes, the fish is wrong, the clock is wrong, you're not right. Really good. I like some great lines in this.
Absolutely. And I do like the decisions that are made here by the director and writer, because it is possible, if you're watching this for the first time and you're not aware of who the Moon Knight character is, it's possible when Stephen wakes up after that whole chase sequence in Germany that you could go, oh, it was all a dream. Because the idea of him escaping in this chase scene in the cupcake van, when a guy climbs into the front to try and shoot at him, he's smashing cupcakes into his face. That could absolutely be a dream. That may not have happened in real life. So you could be forgiven for thinking when he wakes up here that this is all a dream. But they're going to set the story back in motion for you to show that this isn't a dream. This is just something that's going on in his life that you're going to have to learn as you go along. So really well built up, really well put together.
Great.
I think we've already talked about the chase sequence quite a lot out of there. It is an amazingly well put together sequence. I love that we don't get to see anything of Khonshu. But let's knock on to our final point, which kind of wraps up everything else that we haven't talked about so far in the episode. So
and we still have the notes as well.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's get on to Total Eclipse, which is
a total eclipse of our hearts.
Exactly. Because we're back in London. He thinks it's Friday when in fact it's Sunday, and the date doesn't go so well.
Doesn't go so well. He's sitting there.
It doesn't go at all. Evening, and she tells him, lose my phone number.
But she sat there 2 days beforehand, and had a steak dinner on her own in the best steak restaurant in London. I have to say, this is another huge bar for Oscar Isaac. His moment where he does actually order a steak. He's vegan. Remember, that was called out before. He said he was going to go there and eat bread, but where he does order a steak from the waiter, though his delivery of those lines where he really doesn't care what he's saying and really doesn't care what's being delivered. He's just so forlorn because he's now unable to have the date with the girl that he thought would have been impossible for him to get a date with. He's unable to have the date, and it's like as if everything's passing over him as he's just saying words, mouthing things at the waiter until the waiter eventually goes away and brings him back a steak. So I do like how it's delivered. They're really, really good performance.
Yeah. As you say, we do get, he gets this moment where he sees the scratches on the floorboards in his apartment. So he suddenly finds an old phone and a locker key. I think I used to have that old phone. It certainly looks very familiar. And
very smartly, also including a charger. So we know that Mark does charge his phone when he is in control of the body.
So we do see the name Layla come up. So we hear her voice. We don't see her in this episode.
Yeah.
But in amongst all the lines and lines of Layla missed calls, we have Deschamps there, which, at least in the comics, Jean-Paul Frenchy Deschamps, one of his friend, effectively, sidekick, general helper outist, I guess. So, potentially, I don't know, it might be going in a different direction for the series, but certainly, there's that little Easter egg.
I did like the nod there, because it just, even if it doesn't plan out to anything, I like that it's just one different name that called over the last few months, because we hear that Layla's been trying to contact him for months without him picking up on her. So I like that there's just one other line in there, and that's for Duchamp. Yeah.
And, calls him Mark, even with the stupid accent.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, he went, hello. He did when in doubt, go dark and gruffled, do the bad man voice. I'm Mark.
Okay. yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I'll be intrigued to see Layla as the series goes on as well, to see who this is and why she's been so interested in contacting Mark.
Definitely.
What else have we not talked about in the episode, guys?
Well, there's obviously the ending.
Yes.
The big ending, which I think we can potentially get into. For me, this was fantastic. So Mark is cornered by Arthur, and he is told, as we said, he is found with chaos in him. And then Stephen runs away. He goes back to work when he knows there's really, when you've been chased, let's go 3 rooms over and just finish off the rest of my shift. I was like, cool. All right. Yep. That is true. That is how that would happen. But
well, Arthur does say leave him alone. He does say he doesn't send anybody to chase him down. There is that weird bit that effectively he's realized that some of the patrons in the museum and some of his co-workers are also acolytes for Arthur. So that would be weird going back to work after that. Hi JP.
Well,
you're the
definitely.
security guard. You're one of his acolytes.
And also, not only that, he went back to work after being sort of confronted by Arthur again in the museum, but remember he sees Khonshu in the corridor where he sees Khonshu coming down the corridor. There's the old lady that then comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I like that finished where the old lady is going to her friends and is battering her door to try and get in.
Like, I lost my contact. Sure, yeah, I hope you find it. Let me in.
Let me in.
Not sure that's her real friends, but I also, that the touch and the joke of it is that Stephen's trying to get out of the building. He's trying to get to the ground floor. She comes on the third floor and brings him back up to the floor he's already left, which is a nice little gag too.
And he's back in his apartment, and so like his life that has gone very, very strange for him. So even him getting the bus into work the next day is pretty courageous of him as well.
Well, also let's just be fair. London buses are not that big, so how he missed Arthur at the top? Like, Arthur just came down from the second floor of the bus.
Or did he? And I think this is something they're going to be playing with for us for the rest of the season, or at least for a few episodes of the season with Stephen Grant. I don't think Arthur was on that bus at all. In the same way that he saw Khonshu outside the bus as the bus rode by, I think he sees Arthur there. No one's lips move, and that didn't sound like Stephen Grant's voice saying those words while Arthur was on the bus. Yeah. There he is. So I think potentially astral projection if we pull it into Doctor Strange, or potentially it's just a figment of Stephen's imagination because he's feeling that pressure of being chased.
And there is the moment where he's at the museum. I think he's speaking with Scotty. Donna's giving him hassle because he's late again, and he's like, hang on a minute, you were on the bus, and he follows a completely different person.
Yes, he does.
Who's certainly doesn't look like Arthur. Yeah. We don't see him change into Arthur, even though that might be the case.
He certainly has a lot less hair than Arthur.
Yeah, but and he's shorter and a little rounder. Yep. So I think it could be, there's some, as you say, some type of astral or mythological projection. Or I guess spiritual domain, guess, in this, that's happening.
Yep. We then get the confrontation, and then we get the souvenir closed down, and we get the Anubis-like dogs, the dog-like, essentially beasts, that have been howling and skittering away, and, they chase him. They chase him, and they chase him good. Mm-hmm. And we don't get a full look. We get like glimpses. Like, we don't get that kind of like shock and awe look, and I preferred that.
Yeah, it's much scarier, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Much scarier, and again, it is through Stephen's eyes. He's not going to stop. Look at this thing. He's going to run for his life away from it. Yeah.
I like that it's all sort of the precursor to all this is him hearing the sounds of a dog, and he's like, here, doggy. He thinks there's a dog lost in the museum. And then he sees it, and he's like hiding, and then he's running for his life.
Yeah.
Again, really good.
I was kind of getting little flashes of Rick Moranis' character from the original Ghostbusters when the terror dog is after him, where he's like, here, doggy. You know, kind of had that feeling with Stephen Grant as well, because he's not expecting something bad to happen here, and that's why the horror moment works well, or the jump moment works well when it's this Egyptian dog coming out after him. Really cool.
And then we get the scene in the toilet, which we've kind of discussed, the requisition, or the relinquishing, of the requisition by Mark and the relinquishing by Stephen of control. Mm-hmm. And we get a slightly off kilter kind of transformation, so you don't see the full transformation, but we do get that closing scene of Moon Knight, beating the hell, turning his white bandages red, or whatever color a dead dog, Anubis-like god monster has, whatever blood they have. Mm-hmm. That looked cool.
Okay, so yes, let's talk about it. We very rarely get the actual MCU costume of a character in the first episode of a show, but here we have it right here at the end of this episode. What do you think of the Moon Knight costume?
It's cool. Mm-hmm. It's a different. It's a more mummy-ish take. It is also buff. It is Captain America level Chris Evans buff.
Yeah.
He's very broad-shouldered.
I didn't think that. I genuinely thought it just felt like Oscar Isaac. It felt like his size. It felt like he's a little bit of a bigger kind of person.
So
than,
maybe
than
Oscar Isaac is just buff, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, Oscar Isaac is pretty buff. Yeah.
I know we had seen some of his in the lead up to filming of Moon Knight, and the pre-production. We had seen some kind of leaked. Well, I don't say leaked, released image, like videos of him doing fight choreography.
Yeah.
And he had, it was that kind of, he's MCUing up. He was, getting shredded.
Mm-hmm.
And it just looked to me like he was so shredded in that costume.
Yeah.
And I suppose the contrast is going to be when we see the different identities of Moon Knight, Mark, and Steven. When we, when we see the three of them, it will be, because we know they're played by the same man.
Uh-huh.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they carry, because Steven carries himself with his shoulders up and a very small kind of frame.
I was going to say, actually, that's one of the things that worked really well here in that scene in the bathroom, because we have Stephen Grant in the same clothing that you see Mark Spector in, and that's the first proper look. You've seen a few glances of Mark in the mirror in his house, but this full view of him wearing exactly the same clothing, but standing much taller and standing much more proud
much firmer,
while he's talking to him, saying, "I've got this in control. Don't worry about it, Stephen. You step back. I've got this." You know, he does feel much more heroic, and he's got his proper American accent as well. He's not talking in that method that the Stephen Grant is talking in. So he does feel like a different character already in just that one scene. I'd be really interested if we got a future episode that revisited those moments that were kind of cut from this episode. The moments where Stephen blanks out and Mark takes over. If we get a future episode where we see it from Mark's perspective of what he's done in that escape from Germany, I think that would be really interesting to see.
That would be
that'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I think for sure.
Yeah.
I think the whole Moon Knight costume wrapping on like a mummy, I think is cool as anything. And I just wondered whether I would have liked to have seen, not say I dislike the eyes being like that kind of white. I'd have liked to have seen them if they were black, in a sense.
Oh, okay.
It felt, because of I know like the aesthetic of that, it is white. But there are I guess it's the playing with shadow, isn't it? A bit, but having them as like headlight lights a bit. Yeah. I wondered if it was less like that in white or with black, or just a bit more play on shadow going across the costume.
So you say headlights, I think moonlight.
No, I agrees. But it felt like headlights. It felt like, you're driving down a country road and those sort of really bright headlights hitting you. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm actually in agreement with you. I'm hoping they explain why his eyes glow so bright. Like, maybe it's that he sees through night vision, and that's how.
Yeah, maybe.
It will be interesting to see, because he doesn't in the comic book, and it's just usually maybe it's the flare up of power as he pulls in the night, like just something to kind of. It looked cool, but it's going to be distracting as hell.
I liked it, and I just simply took it as the moon power of some sort.
Maybe. Yeah, exactly.
Really liked it. There's a great poster of the Moon Knight costume, full head to toe, the Moon Knight costume. There's so many great details in it that we're not seeing on screen because it's moving, and we've only just seen it in this episode.
Yeah,
I love that there's Egyptian hieroglyphs going throughout the costume on all of the bandages that are around him. Really cool. Check out the poster as well. I think that's overall the episode, but there's a couple of little touches in the episode that I wanted to pull out as well. Anybody else got some notes or thoughts they want to pull out?
I definitely just a thought, which is the choice to end like that is it's a decision. Like, it's just essentially you you are going to, here's what you wanted. It's essentially as if you end with Superman just like changing costume and has just taken flight, and that's it. You cut there.
Yeah.
And it's
And
a
I'm
great
like-
choice, especially for people who are watching Daredevil for the first time on Disney Plus. They'll recognize that this is exactly what they did on Daredevil in the final episode of season 1, and you waited for 2 years for the next episode to arrive. What they did here was do it in episode 1 and went, here you go, here's Moon Knight. See you next week.
Yeah.
Brilliant choice.
It is really good choice.
It's a choice.
I've got just 2 notes from me is around Laters Gators. Is who is on the phone there?
Absolutely. Yes.
I'd be really
Mummy.
interested to know. That's exactly what I thought as well.
And I didn't, because Stephen Grant is an identity. Mark Spector is an identity. So whose mother is it that he's talking to? So I know the first conversation he has, or the first call that he makes, he doesn't leave any pauses. So it sounds like he's talking to a voicemail. He's saying, I'm catching up with you. Thanks for the postcard. Gus is great. He wishes he was out there, but he can't swim with only one fin, kind of thing. But it is a one-sided call. The second time when he's downtrodden about his date falling apart, he sounds like he's having a conversation because he's making up the idea that he has this girlfriend that he's going to be bringing over later. And he sounds like he's actually speaking to someone and answering questions. So I wonder who that is. It'll be interesting to find out. I'm sure we will.
Yeah. And the only other thing, because I didn't mention it, was I absolutely creased up as the cupcake bounced down the road at the end of that chase. I just, for some reason, I didn't mention it whilst we were talking about the chase. I just really, really enjoyed that whole thing really of that chase, and the seriousness, the danger, and finally the cupcake bouncing down the road.
Followed by the final destination ending of all of the logs coming down, crushing the people attacking Stephen. Yes, a really good fun moment to end that. I'm going to steal this from Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast. Hi, Ray. I just want to steal a little bit of speculation from them, because there's a couple of things that happen in this episode. Again, we're not talking about future episodes. We haven't seen future episodes, but there's a couple of things that are mentioned in this episode I think you're going to be meaning to pick up as the show goes on. I'm going to give one without comment. When he's talking to the little girl and telling her about the ancient Egyptian practice of pulling out all their insides and leaving just the heart behind so they can make it through the meadow of reeds and go to their version of the afterlife, the young girl says to him, well, why are you back on Earth then? And Stephen replies to her, well, I'm not dead. And then goes, or am I? And questions himself as to whether he's dead or not, because he's been having this weird life. Things have been going very strangely for him. So he's wondering and does question whether he's alive or not. So, leave that one there. One other one that was in there, Arthur's kind of explaining Amit, the Egyptian god that he follows. He says that she was taken down by one of her avatars, someone that followed her, leading to an excellent joke from Stephen Grant where he goes, oh, Avatar, those blue alien creatures. And Arthur's kind of looking at him weirdly and he goes, oh, do you mean the anime? So nice little gag there, but really important. One of Amit's own followers took her down, her actual avatar. So bear that in mind for a future episode as we get those layers of the mythology that we're falling into here in the Egyptian world, or at least Stephen Grant's falling into. So,
I'll also call out the marketing snafu that is made, that is called out, where there are 2 missing gods on the poster of the Pantheon of Gods on the British Museum's artwork. And assuming that the 2 missing gods are going to be Amit and Khonshu.
Exactly.
That. I'm assuming that's how they're going to kind of go, oop, the 2 missing gods, because everyone's forgotten about.
Exactly. And those 9 gods are the Ennead, which is what he's reading to stay awake as well.
Yes.
And that is titled The Rift Between God and Man.
There you go. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. But yes, that's thanks to Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast for allowing us to steal the speculation section.
I just will never be saying that word because I will always mess it up.
Yeah, so would I.
Elation.
I might just record Spectrelation and we can just use it as a little drop in so that you don't have to say it.
Or if Ray from Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, wants to record different variations of spectralization.
Chris, Spectrelation.
Speculation. If he wants to record different variations of speculation and just give us that bit and we'll just put it in. It would just be his Aussie dulcet tones coming over the airways going forward.
And one last thing from Martha Dara's description of Ahmet and what she used to do. Interestingly, she began punishing people who had committed crimes and then began punishing people for their future crimes. So almost like the Minority Report of the Egyptians. And understandable why you would eventually take someone down who was punishing people for things they hadn't done yet, or saying things that they might possibly do in the future. It's a great power to have if you want to take down your enemies, to go, oh no, they're going to be bad in 2 weeks' time when they do something that only I know they're going to do. So again, important to bear that in mind about Ahmet.
Yes. So another identity of Mark Spector and Stephen Grant is Tom Cruise.
He'll get into the MCU someday.
He just gets quite he just grows like 10 foot smaller.
Good stuff. Chris, do you defend Moon Knight episode 1?
I do very much defend. This was one of the best opening of a series in a long time. Mm-hmm. Actually, for me, it's right beside WandaVision for that opening episode. I.e., it's just so strong, so unique, such a take, such a choice in everything. I.e., like in this, it is the comedy, the zaniness, the body humor, as well as essentially everything else, like just the choices. And they didn't bury the lead. They went, yeah, you want a superhero costume? Here you go. Mm-hmm. You want gods, you want craziness, you want black and white, you want mystery, here you go. It's all there. And it's such a unique take. It does remind me of when we watched WandaVision, where we were all sitting around this going, what did we just watch? Mm-hmm. Like, this is so weird and just so different. I'm here for it. And that was exactly how I'm feeling right now. Excellent. So yes, 100% defend.
Good stuff. How about yourself, John? Do you defend Moon Knight episode 1?
Yeah, really defend this. I give it 5 one-fin wonders out of 5.
Ooh, strong.
Yeah, I thought this was really, really good as an opener. As I say, it crammed so much in, but told it in such a great way in terms of the humor, all the different mechanisms and tricks for those changes in identity, and the nod to the spiritual realm of ancient Egypt, with the third voice. It felt like a mystery. You know, when you think of Egypt, you think of those mysteries, you think of all that. This felt like a mystery. Stephen Grant was going through his own mystery because he hadn't a clue of all these things that were taking place. And the action sequence, particularly that chase scene from the German Schloss on the mountainside, all the way through to the cupcake bouncing down the road and the logs taking out the final 2 armed guards I loved it. I loved all of it. It was like it just perfect mix of the result of Mark Spector's violence and training with the what the hell is going on of Stephen Grant.
Yep.
And seeing the Moon Knight costume come onto Mark Spector there as he asks for control to Stephen Grant is just really really good. And I think all the supporting cast, like with Donna, with JB the security guard, with the tour guide, the living statue, the Aquarian shoppist, they all just filled into that brilliantness. So I thought, the acting, directing, the script for me was just absolutely on point. So yeah, 5 one-fin wonders out of 5. God bless you, Gus. and of course, as the Aquarian lady says, we don't sell disabled fish. That Finding Nemo's got a lot to answer for. I thought it was really, really funny. Yeah.
Excellent.
So, Derek, do you defend Moon Knight episode 1?
Yeah, absolutely. They nailed it. As we mentioned, we've been talking about the possibility of a Moon Knight for many, many years now, and I think this is the right way to do this character for the MCU. What a great way to introduce him. What a great character to be the avatar for the audience, let's say. Stephen Grant is the person that's guiding us through this, and it's great that he has no idea what's going on. I like that. I like Oscar Isaac playing that role of an innocent person thrown into a crazy situation. But he's not that innocent, because a little bit of a flash and he wakes up covered in blood. So I like that. I like how they've set it up. The humor was something I was totally not expecting going into this. All the trailers have let me know that this is going to be a show that is dark and gritty and back to the kind of level of the Daredevil street violence, loads of fights with knives. That's what I was expecting. The show has a really good sense of humor. Was really surprised that the voice of Khonshu was making jokes as well at the beginning of the episode. So, I'm really intrigued. Looking forward to seeing lots and lots more. 5 more episodes of the show to go on Moon Knight. Good stuff. We do want to hear your thoughts about Moon Knight. Please email us into feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with your thoughts. You can also pop on over to our Facebook group right now at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. There'll be a spoiler post up for each episode of Moon Knight for you to leave your spoiler-filled thoughts and chat with other fellow defenders about your thoughts about the show. But we do have one last thing to do on this episode of Moon Knight. We're going to be having another pub quiz. This time, we're heading over to the bar with no name.
Yes. Fellow defenders, fellow quizzers, it is the bar with no name. This week, for question 1, it is a 2-parter worth 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we didn't really see any drinks being quaffed so much, other than whatever was in his thermos flask.
I presume that was a nice cup of tea, Jim.
Yeah, a cup of tea.
No, he's a coffee man.
Yeah, so we'll say
British people don't drink coffee. It's always a cup of tea. Especially if you're pretending to be British and putting on a British accent, you have to be drinking a cup of tea with a nice bicky. Right?
But no, I don't think the bar with no name should really be serving tea. So let's just go with I don't know, a Tia Maria. That's kind of coffee type.
Yeah, or espresso martini.
Espresso martini, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think the bar with no name is much more of a dirty beer kind of
place.
I
think it is as well, probably. Yeah,
unwashed glasses.
A warm bitter, just to keep maybe the London pub theme running through it as well.
There you go.
Absolutely. And if you haven't participated in one of our pub quizzes before, this is how it works. We're going to be giving out one question each episode for the 6 episodes of Moon Knight. Put all the questions together, email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with all the correct answers, or as many of them as you get, and we will be giving away some Moon Knight goodies for the fellow defender who has gotten the most questions right.
Yes.
If there are multiple people that get the questions right, they will be going to a hat, and we'll be giving away to one random winner of the people who've got most correct. But there will be one question every episode. John's going to give you the first question right now.
Yes. So, question 1. What steak does Stephen Grant order, and how does he like his steak cooked?
And this is from Stephen's perspective. What does Stephen order, not what the waiter thinks Stephen ordered, right?
Definitely.
Very important. So 2 things there. 2 points for this one, 2-parter this week. So get both of them right and you get 2 points. John, do you want to give the question one more time?
Sure. What steak does Stephen Grant order, and how does he like his steak cooked?
I like it. Loved the scene. Excellent stuff. Thanks so much for that. Look out for those questions. You can also go over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com. I'll have a post up there which will have each of the questions after we've released the podcasts. But this is the first place to get them, let's say that.
Always.
Thanks so much, fellow defenders, for joining us for this week's episode of Moon Knight. We are also covering Star Trek Picard every week on the podcast here. You can join us for that. I'd love if you also subscribed to the podcast at tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can subscribe to us by looking for TV Podcast Industries on any Khonshu supporting or Amit supporting podcast player.
Indeed. You can also support us monthly over on patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, or you can support us with a one-off donation where you can pop on over to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, or as Derek said, you can support us by subscribing and sharing the podcast. Remember, sharing the podcast is sharing the love.
Absolutely. This episode of TV Podcast Industries is brought to you by our supporters over at Patreon, including Andrew Davis. Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you everybody else that's been supporting us over on Patreon.
Yes, thank you, Andrew, for supporting us. Really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate it. And thank you to all of our supporters over on patreon.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thanks to all the supporters, whichever way you support us by, it's really very, very much appreciated.
But with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, country supporters, Egyptian gods, dead mummies, and everything in between, thank you so much for joining us for this discussion on episode 1 of Moon Knight, the limited series on Disney+. If you like what you hear, make sure you subscribe, and we will be back same Moon Knight channel, same Moon Knight time next week.
Oh, we almost got through an episode without the same old raggedy joke being pulled out. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back next time. Hope you've been enjoying Moon Knight.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much, fellow defenders, for joining us. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, keep defending, and later, skaters.
Bye.
Bye.